Okay. The first major application of the containment theory is the Truman Doctrine. And the Truman Doctrine was designed to contain communism within the boundaries that it currently existed. Okay, so there was this acceptance of communism exists, behind the Iron Curtain. However, we want to make sure that it doesn't, that Iron Curtain isn't pushed further west into Western Europe. And in March of 1947, Truman announces first that he's going to give aid to Greece and Turkey. Greece and Turkey were struggling immensely from the end of World War II. Greece in particular had been devastated, and they were desperately in need of money. And there was serious potential for communism to develop in these two countries. And so Truman announces that he's going to fund Greece and Turkey, and so $400 billion are allocated to help Greece and Turkey. The Truman Doctrine will ultimately be extended to go anywhere where aid was needed in order to support non-communist governments. So basically, what the Truman Doctrine does is it says that the United States will use monetary means to ensure that that any country that is threatened by Soviet influence, okay, in other words, that its potential to fall to communism and to fall under the Soviet sphere of influence, we're going to give money in order to ensure that that doesn't happen. And so basically the Truman Doctrine in 1947 is widely considered to be the start of the Cold War, when we make a concerted government policy decision that says we are going to help countries remain free of Soviet influence, to remain free of communism. And so we have... Okay, and the Truman Doctrine will ultimately lead to the Marshall Plan. While Greece and Turkey were certainly struggling, they weren't the only countries in Europe that were experiencing economic problems after World War II. In fact, most of Western Europe struggled to revive after the war, including Britain and France. And so these countries were really in dire straits, and their infrastructure lay in ruins. This is where World War II was fought, and the situation was devastating. You had millions of people in refugee camps just waiting for the government to rebuild their country so that they could get back into homes. And to add to this, to make it even more difficult, the recovery effort, the winter of 1946 was the coldest winter in memory. And so you've got people freezing, they're dying, they are, they're truly struggling, and they need help. Okay, they need help. And this is where George Marshall, the Secretary of State, steps in and says, he proposes the plan that the United States should provide monetary aid to any European country that needed it. And, the goal here was that by rebuilding war-torn Europe, the United States would ultimately be helping to revive the global economy, and that was going to be helpful for everybody. Most importantly, the United States, certainly in terms of our trade and moving forward as this major superpower. So it was in our best interest for for Western European countries to be economically healthy and thriving. And so there was a lot of support for the Marshall Plan. There were some drawbacks. Certainly, the American taxpayers were expected to fund the effort, and so taxes went up, and that's never going to make people happy. And in addition, there were people who were really afraid of angering the Soviets. They did not want to be, to put the United States in a position where we were antagonizing the Soviet Union. However, there was an even stronger fear of the growing influence of communism. And the fact is, with this fear of the spread of communism, how is communism going to spread? Communism is going to spread to people who are unhappy, who are struggling, who are starving, who are freezing, who are living in refugee camps, who aren't being taken care of by their democratic capitalist government. They're going to be looking for answers somewhere else. And you start to see people turning to communism. You see more and more people speaking out that maybe communism is the right way to go. And that's going to certainly encourage this idea of the Marshall Plan and making sure that that doesn't happen. And in fact, in 1948, Czechoslovakia will fall to communism. And when that happens, I got an email. When that happens, European nations are going to the situation with European nations is going to become more and more urgent. And so the United States will step up and, in fact, will ultimately spend $13 billion in aid to Western Europe. And the single largest recipient of that aid is actually Great Britain, who will spend about $3 billion to help rebuild Great Britain. So the Marshall Plan ultimately, is, I think in hindsight considered a success. Europe will rebound, and we're going to look at some of the issues with containment as we move along. But for the most part, Western Europe is pretty secure, so we end up in a good spot. All right, that's the end of our first little portion of the flipped classroom. Hopefully, I've got you guys signed up to go on Edmodo and take a quiz. If I didn't get that far, or my technology comes crashing down on me, then you should have a little sheet of paper that you're filling out so that you can answer some questions. Again, the point here is to make sure that you've got the basic background so that when you come into class tomorrow, we can kind of go deeper with it. Tomorrow we'll be modeling parts of what I expect from you in the enrichment program. So we'll be looking at one of the topics and looking at some primary source material and that type of thing. So again, thank you very much. Hopefully you have enjoyed this. It's kind of fun. All right, see you tomorrow. Bye.